So you have, things happening like what just happened with New Orleans or with the tsunami, are becoming more and more frequent events, which are going to, displace huge numbers of people. So we're moving into a much more chaotic system, a chaotic situation, where the socioeconomic structures that have been holding things together are really functioning worse and worse, to the point where they may simply just collapse at a certain point. I mean, Kalaman's thesis, which I think I agree with, is that the positive potential here would be 2008, a kind of collapse of the current socioeconomic structure, and 2009, a kind of recrystallization into a harmonic planetary civilization, abolishing the nation state and this kind of corporate structures, the debt structures that are holding third world countries in slavery. So that's, I think, what we need to work towards. I think there are actually practical tools that will come into play to do that. So let's see. So Arguelles, how many people know about his his calendar, the dream spell? Okay, so he began to realize that this whole time problem was the key, and that somehow our society, that when we think about what's the deepest underlying problem with our civilization, we think usually it's the patriarchy, or it's technology, or it's all sorts of things. But like Gebser, he came to the realization that the deepest problem is a missed relationship, or a messed up relationship to time. Now we'd actually embodied that in our calendar. That if you go back 5,000 years, the cultures that existed pre-3100 BC roughly were, lunar calendar based, very obsessed with moon cycles, and often great mother worshipping, matriarchal in that sense. And then there was this kind of movement into civilization with agriculture, the building of Stonehenge and the pyramids, and we went from that kind of lunar focus to a solar focus, which was embodied in a solar calendar, where instead of focusing on the actual real movements of the moon, we took the year, made it into a circle, divided it into 12 parts, and kind of imposed that on reality. So it was like we imposed this abstract grid of time, sort of mechanistically onto reality. And by doing that, we desynchronized ourselves from natural cycles. So his idea is that it's kind of like building a building from unsure foundations. The higher the building it gets, the more wobbly it gets, until of necessity it's going to collapse. And that he thought that, because we had desynchronized ourselves from natural cycles, we don't think of the calendar as being very important. We think of it as just, it's just a little thing. But actually, it totally inscribes us in this system. It tells us when we were born, when we pay taxes, when we go to school. So actually, it's locking us into a whole kind of structure of reality. So he began to feel that the only way to combat that would be to go back to this Mayan calendar material, and he began to receive these kind of direct transmissions and channels about how to use the Mayan calendar, and he created this 13-moon system, which was creating this 13 28-day cycle. Saying that the moon cycle was essentially 28 days. And I looked at his system, and I found it really, really interesting. And actually, had synchronicities about when I met him and talked to him. I'd been mapped on his calendar. What's that? Okay. 5 minutes. Wow. Okay. Anyway, so he created this alternative calendar. But I began to realize that his calendar is not, I don't think, it's not that it's not correct, it's not that it's not, you can use it, it's a system, but I don't think it's the system. So for him, it's like we have this rush, we have to get his calendar in place before there's this kind of, this global economic collapse. And he's been fighting for that and trying to, present it through the counterculture in the underground and through the UN and every way he can think of. But when I studied the crop circles, that also led me into the stone circles. And I felt like one reason the crop circles are in England, in the region of Avebury and Stonehenge, is they're actually introducing us to what's important about those stone circles. And Stonehenge is actually a temple of solar-lunar integration, which sort of somehow brilliantly, like it's like a computer that puts together lunar eclipses and all this kind of cyclical information. So what we have to find a way to do, and it was almost like I think Arguelles became too lunar. He realized that we'd sort of gone into this solar masculine order, and then we had to go back to this lunar intuitive order, but he went too far into the lunar and the intuitive, whereas what we'd actually would need would be, once again, this kind of really complete integration of a kind of intuitive and rational perspective on time. So what I'm suggesting in my book is that at some point there would have to be a kind of global meeting of minds with scientists, astronomers, physicists, people from different esoteric and indigenous traditions to actually just create a new calendar as a kind of unifying global standard. And what I thought was really brilliant about Arguelles' ideas is that if you had this new calendar, there was a time when there was kind of a socioeconomic collapse, let's say what might happen in 2008, if you had this tool and through the global commons there became a huge move to implement it, it could instantly delegitimize all of the institutions that are functioning under the old calendar system. So, because they would the dates when they had created things would no longer have any relevance. So all of the nation-state charters, all of the third world debt structures, the corporate charters, the unfair penal codes, you could just wipe that away. It would be like a kind of collective realization of humanity that we didn't have to be, the inertia of those old systems no longer applied to us, and we could start from a more harmonic basis. And I think, or at least hypothesize, that one reason we've created this kind of global communications system is to act as a kind of a switcher, so when these ideas need to be promulgated at the right time, they can just move very, very quickly around the planet, and we can kind of harmonically move into this different framework. So I guess I can stop there and take some questions. Okay, she's talking about the people who founded the United States had a connection to the astronomical and astrological knowledge. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I agree with you. I mean, it works on every level. I mean, that was the point of Arguelles' book, Time in the Technosphere, that the dating, even in the Gregorian, it all kind of works. That these cycles all are kind of implicated. It's kind of, I see it as just like a single integrated process, an evolutionary process, much like fetal development or something like that we're kind of going through on a collective level. Yeah, I think just being, okay. Oh, it's tough to repeat these questions. They're long. I don't know. He said something. How can I do this at home? Okay, how can I do this at home? That's what he said. Okay, yeah, so basically, I think, just becoming increasingly aware, trying to completely, increasingly intensify your awareness of synchronicities, of all these things happening, so that you begin to get this awareness, of this, like the Venus transits, how this stuff actually does. Like when I was at Burning Man a few years ago, there was this Mars came really close to the Earth, the closest it had been in 60,000 years. I mean, I felt that was kind of like perhaps some kind of vibrational shift in the planetary harmonic or something, and then just keeping more and more track of your own synchronicities, your own passages, and being more and more present. So you're really in all of these different kind of levels of time at the same time. And it's really like when you really think about it, it's really the neglect of time that has gotten us in a lot of trouble. Because the way we approach problems is we do not take time fully into account. So if you think about like the Iraq situation, we're treating Iraq as like, oh, we have to protect Iraq, this nation. Well, colonialism, imperialism created this nation in the 30s. It's a tribal culture. We imposed this nation state on it, and then we act as that as like this permanent thing. I think similar things on all levels, in terms of personal relationships too, anyway, yeah. I mean, the other thing that I should talk about is I don't think it's about somebody who's what's actually going to happen on that day. I don't think that's a worthy place to put one's attention. I think what really is important